So today we are going to practice a little bit of belly dancing. Belly dance is a very feminine form of dance that was practiced only between women at origins. And because it is a very feminine dance, it awakens different qualities of femininity within us. Some of these qualities have to do with control of our body parts, which are also reflected in the control of different emotions that we have. Also, relaxation, because it relaxes different parts of our body, especially the abdominal area, which we use quite a lot in belly dance. But actually, in belly dance, we use all the body parts. We will practice a few hand gestures, a few chest movements, hip movements, and a little bit of walk, so that you can feel how all these parts of your body are engaged and awakened. You will see that your body actually can intuitively follow my movements, even if I explain it in a very simple way. So let's begin together this short dance workout. You just need to relax, look at me, follow me, and let your body take the lead. So it's very important that in belly dance we have a correct posture before all. For this, it's important that we have the back straight, the shoulders backwards, and that our pelvic area is tucked in. So it's not sticking out like in other dances, but actually we tuck our pelvis in so that we can engage the muscles of the abdomen more. Then you can also place your hands horizontally to the floor with your fingers extended slightly and very graciously. And now we will begin with a very simple movement. For this, we just stretch our legs shoulder width, and we will do some movements forward and backward, just with our hips. After this, we can also move our hips left and right. For this, also slightly bend your knees, because if you have your legs completely stretched, you will not be able to do the extension of the hip properly. So now let's try to extend the hip even more, maximum, as if you are trying to push something out with your hip. And remember that the rest of your body is still, so we don't go like this, we don't sway our body, only the hip with full control over it. And now you can do double movements with the hip. And forward, backward. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. And now we will combine these two movements into one movement that is called the hip circle. So for this, first we will bring our hips forward, then lateral, then backward, and then lateral again. So let's just do this simple movement with our hips. Very good. And now this movement will be made into a more flowing movement, not one that stops at every step of the movement. So we will just make this movement round. Feel the stability that you have in your legs. And imagine that you are drawing a circle with your hips. And now in the opposite direction. Very good. You can stop now and take a few deep breaths to relax. You can feel already the energy in your hip area being activated, bringing more effervescence, relaxation in this area. So now, are you ready for the next movement? This also will be very simple. So, in the beginning, for this movement, let's just play with our hips like this, as if we are just swaying our hips forward and backward. The feet are still on the ground, so we don't actually move the legs, not even the knees, only slightly. You can bend the knees. So as if you are trying to hit something that is in front of you with your hips. You can do this movement even a bit faster. Again, slower. And now we will turn this movement into a small figure 8, as we call it, which means that we will draw an 8 on the floor, to say so, with the hips. So in the same way as you are going forward and backward, now you also make the movement round with your hips. So you still go forward and backward, but you make the movement round. So remember that this is just a horizontal figure 8, and this will help you very much to develop a very good control on your hips. And also in the opposite direction. So now we will do another very famous movement in belly dance that is called the Mayas. First, you lift up your hip as if you are trying to bring your hip closer to your chest. So you bring your hip up, then you extend your hip out. Together with, you see that your entire body comes a little bit outward. Then you push your hip down, and then you bring it inward. So let's try again. Up, out, down, and in. Up, out, down, and in. And let's try with the other side also. So for this, you relax the left knee when you engage the left hip. So the hip goes up, out, down, and in. Up, out, down, and in. We practice a few more times. That's very good. And now let's make this movement flow. So now instead of doing it in this separated way, we will just continuously pass from one stage to another of this movement. So up, out, down, and in. And with the other side. That's very good. So these movements are called the Mayas. And when you do both left and right side, one after the other, it has an even more beautiful effect. So let's try that. We'll start with the right hip and then with the left hip continuously, one after the other. Do some beautiful hand gestures You can also bring your hands upwards. And that's good. Now we will continue with a very important movement in belly dance that you see quite often, which is the hip drop. We will turn slightly lateral to our public, to say so, because in belly dance very rarely we dance exactly straight looking to the public. Most of the times we are slightly by profile. So for this, first you relax the left hip and the right leg is stretched. You can bring your arms in a specific position like this, and then with your weight on your toes you will begin just to let your hip loose, and you just bring it up. After you bring it up, you see that it naturally drops. So we do a few of these movements, not very fast, in this rhythm. And now let's continue on the other side. So now you let loose your right leg. And we continue moving the hip up and down. Also, it's important that this movement is done with control, so that when your hip moves, it doesn't also bounce your entire body like this, but only the hip is moving very consciously. And now we can do this movement a bit faster. And on the other side, we start with slow. And then fast. So now you found out the secret of one of the most used movements in belly dance, which is the hip drop. And now I want to add to this movement an important element, which is walking. Because when you will be dancing belly dance, you will not just be standing in one spot, you will be walking around. So for this, we will start again like we were doing the hip drop on the left hip, and then you will move in a circle, but following your hip. So to exemplify, the movement is this. And your right leg just follows you. Now let's try on the other side. And in this way, you can actually walk wherever you want around the stage. You can go just lateral, or you can go in any direction you want. Now you might be asking yourself, if you want to go forward, how do you do that? So there are a number of ways that you can do that, but one of them is just the simple walking with the hip drop. So for this, it's important that you let your knees free. So your knees will actually move by bending, and they will reverb in the hip movement. And the movement will be like this. And backward. So let's practice this walking a bit more. Remember that the hips are leading this movement. Even if it seems a bit funny for you in the beginning, you will see that we will add something to this movement and it will make it feel even better. And once more. Very good. So now to this movement, we will actually just relax even the hip area more, and we will let the hips lead the entire movement and the legs will just follow. So it's not like naturally when we walk and that when we extend our legs and we walk, but this time actually the hips are the ones that are instructing the movement. So let's begin. And backward. The secret to this movement is actually to do these kicks with the hip while you are walking. So kick, 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 and backward. And faster. And as you can see, the rest of the body is actually not moving much. That's good. You can relax a bit. You can take a few breaths. Let's do a few breathing movements. Here you can also play with your hands, which are very used in belly dance to style the movements. So, for example, you bring one hand down, the other stays up, and then you change. And then you can do it both. That's very good. So now we will do a simple exercise that is very useful for us as women because it helps us to become more conscious of our chest area. Of course, when we become more aware of one part of our body, we also have more control and more awareness on all the emotions that are in connection to that body part. So shortly said, this will be some chest movements. For this, we will now focus on the upper part of the body and the lower part of the body will stay still. You remember that before that, the situation was different and the upper body was not moving, we were just moving the hips. So now the hips are staying still. You can actually place your hands somewhere so you can support yourself. And we will begin with some simple chest movements of up and down. So the movement comes like this, as if you are trying to push something off your chest. That's very good. Now we will do some lateral chest movements. So we will act as if our chest is a shelf that we are just trying to move from one side to the other. And as you can see, the hips are not following. So it can be a little bit difficult, but we only move the upper part of the body. Left and right, left and right, left and right. That's very good. So now we will do a full circle with our chest. This circle will be in the vertical plane, and that your chest is following the natural movement of the clock. So we go up, lateral, down, lateral. You can feel how this movement is very relieving for the chest area. And now we can also do it in the opposite direction. Usually for most women, one part is easier to do than the other part. And now we can do smaller circles and bigger. And in the opposite side, smaller and bigger. That's very good. Now take a deep breath. Following this movement will be another very sensual movement which implies this chest rolling. That's why we practiced it before. These movements in belly dance are called camels. They look something like this. You can even do the movement very small. We will also aim to engage our hands. First we do the camel movement simply. And now let's add the hands. And on the opposite side. And with the hands. And you can also do small circles when you do this movement. And now we will practice our last exercise for today, another very well-known movement which is called the shimmy. So let's just begin by alternating the bending of the knees. So as you see, the bending of the knees leads to the movement of the hips. Let's just do this for a moment. Even a bit faster. And even faster. And try to do the movement even smaller and even faster. So as you see, the hips look like they are moving a lot, but actually the knees are moving. And even faster. And even faster. and gently relax. Let's breathe in and out. So now that we practiced all these movements, you probably feel more relaxed, more effervescent, and I advise you to try to repeat these movements also by yourself when you have time, even in the morning, because it will dynamize very much your entire being. Thank you very much for being with me in this little dance workshop that we did today.